Berlin, 1942. The city was a labyrinth of shadowed alleys, smoke-stained buildings, and the ever-present hum of war machines. To the world, Germany was a fortress of discipline and unity, its Wehrmacht soldiers the embodiment of loyalty to the Reich. Yet beneath the gleaming metals and crisp uniforms, a secret whispered through the ranks, a quiet resistance, a network of men and women bound by conscience rather than orders. Captain Lucas Reinhardt had served the Wehrmacht since the early days of the war. Tall, with a soldier's rigid posture and eyes that seemed always to calculate, he was, by outward appearances, a model officer. But Lucas carried a burden that few could imagine. Each order he followed, each mission he executed, weighed on him like lead, for he had seen too much, understood too much. The slaughter on the Eastern Front, the despair in occupied territories, it had awakened a part of him he could not silence. He often lay awake at night thinking of the civilians, the families torn apart, the faces of children frozen in terror, and he questioned how he could continue serving a regime capable of such cruelty. The resistance movement within the Wehrmacht was unlike the clandestine networks operating outside Germany. These men and women operated in plain sight. They were officers, medics, and soldiers who, while outwardly obedient, sought ways to undermine the regime from within. Their weapons were not always guns. Sometimes they were forged in words, in misdirected orders, or in small acts that could save lives. It was a delicate balance. One wrong move could mean imprisonment, torture, or execution. Lucas had been recruited months ago by an enigmatic figure known only as Vogel. Vogel had a reputation that bordered on myth. A former intelligence officer who now moved through the Wehrmacht like a ghost, leaving messages of hope, instructions for sabotage, and warnings of the Gestapo's gaze. Lucas remembered their first meeting in a dimly lit cellar beneath Berlin, the scent of damp stone and candle wax heavy in the air. Vogel had looked at him with piercing eyes and said, "Loyalty to the Reich is easy. Loyalty to your humanity is much harder." Those words had struck Lucas deeply and had become his guiding principle ever since. Serving the army while resisting it required constant vigilance, courage, and cunning. Their current assignment was fraught with danger. In occupied France, a convoy carrying military supplies crucial for the Eastern Front was scheduled to depart from the port of Le Havre. If the resistance could delay it, even for a day, thousands of German soldiers would face logistical setbacks, potentially altering the course of battles. But more importantly, the convoy contained prisoners, forced laborers, and civilians who would otherwise be sent to a grim fate. Lucas's role was to serve as the eyes inside the operation. Assigned as a logistics officer, he would oversee the loading of the supplies, noting schedules, guards, and weaknesses. Every action he took had to balance obedience with subtle defiance. The night before the convoy's departure, Lucas walked the streets of Le Havre under the cover of darkness. The city smelled of salt and coal, and the docks were alive with the murmur of workers and soldiers. German patrols moved in pairs, their boots echoing against the cobblestones. Every shadow seemed alive with suspicion, and Lucas felt the familiar tightening in his chest that came with operating under such scrutiny. He paused near a warehouse where two sentries discussed trivialities, oblivious to the small figure slipping past them. Inside, he found Eric, a young soldier barely 20, whose courage belied his years. Eric had joined the Wehrmacht reluctantly, like many others, conscripted and unwilling. Yet, in secret, he had become an informant for the resistance, risking everything with a maturity that seemed older than his age. "Captain Reinhardt," Eric whispered, "everything's ready. The guard's rotation is slow tonight. If you move carefully, we can get access to the manifests and alter them." Lucas nodded. "Good. But remember, one mistake and it's over for all of us." Inside the warehouse, they worked silently. Lucas examined crates stamped with the Wehrmacht eagle, noting those containing weapons and others marked with symbols that indicated human cargo. Using a code passed down by Vogel, he left subtle signs for the workers sympathetic to their cause. Small marks on crates that would delay loading or misdirect the guards. Each mark was a small act of rebellion, a thread in the fabric of resistance they were weaving. The work was painstaking. One misstep could mean execution, not only for him but for Eric and any civilian involved. The fear was constant, gnawing, almost physical. Lucas had learned to control it, hiding his tension behind the mask of an officer inspecting inventory. But every time he touched a crate, he felt the weight of the lives depending on him. Hours passed, and Lucas moved through the warehouse with meticulous care. He memorized the placement of each crate, the timing of each guard's patrol, and the slightest inefficiencies in the loading process. Every detail mattered. He had spent years learning to obey orders without question, yet now he had to subvert that training without raising suspicion. It was a dance on the edge of a blade, and he felt the pressure of each passing second as acutely as a wound. He often thought about the strange moral calculus of the Wehrmacht resistance. Unlike partisan fighters in the forests of France or Poland, these men wore the uniforms of their oppressors. They were expected to carry out orders without question, to enforce the Reich's tyranny, yet they were quietly undoing it. Their rebellion was invisible, a ghostly counterpoint to the war around them. He remembered missions where he had rerouted trains carrying civilians to safer stations, falsified paperwork, and handed forged orders to unsuspecting officers. Each act was a small miracle, yet he could not forget the faces of those he could not save. Their cries haunted him on sleepless nights, mingling with the distant echoes of artillery. As Lucas finished marking the final crates, he sensed movement behind him. A shadow fell across the warehouse floor, and he froze. A guard had returned unexpectedly, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Lucas forced a calm smile and adjusted his uniform. "Just checking inventory, sir. Orders from command." The guard's gaze lingered for a moment, sharp and piercing. Lucas felt a pulse of panic, but he held his composure. After an eternity, the guard nodded once and moved on. Lucas exhaled silently. Every day in the Wehrmacht was a balancing act between survival and conscience. Later that night, he met with Vogel in a hidden cellar beneath an abandoned church. Vogel was a man in his 50s, with sharp eyes that seemed to see through walls. "Good work today," Vogel said. "The convoy will move tomorrow at dawn. Remember, it's not just about slowing the machinery of war. It's about sending a message. Every act of conscience counts. Every life saved matters." Lucas nodded, feeling the weight of their mission. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the quiet rebellion growing within its streets. He could hear the distant rumble of trains and the occasional shout from a patrolling soldier, reminders that the world above continued in its ordinary cruelty. He thought about the civilians whose fates rested in his hands and felt both terror and determination intertwining within him. The next morning, chaos struck in the most elegant way. By carefully mislabeling crates and adjusting schedules, the resistance ensured that several trucks carrying prisoners were diverted to the wrong destinations. Guards, confused by conflicting orders, argued among themselves. Meanwhile, a small team of local French operatives, coordinated through Vogel, sabotaged the engines of key vehicles, delaying the convoy for hours. Lucas watched from the shadows as soldiers cursed and tried to restore order. Each moment of delay was a victory, though invisible to the outside world. Some of the prisoners, unaware of their narrow escape, whispered prayers they could not have imagined would be answered. Yet victory was always fleeting in war. Among the chaos, a Gestapo officer named Kraus, notorious for his suspicion and brutality, arrived unexpectedly. His gaze swept the docks like a hawk. Lucas felt a chill. Kraus had a reputation for uncovering even the smallest irregularities. The officer's boots clanged against the dock, each step reverberating like a drumbeat of judgment. Lucas ducked behind crates, heart hammering, and watched as Kraus scrutinized the operation, his sharp eyes missing nothing. One wrong glance could unravel everything. In that tense moment, Lucas realized that the hidden resistance inside the Wehrmacht was a dangerous game. Each act of conscience risked not only his life, but the lives of everyone connected to the network. And yet, as he observed the convoys delayed and the prisoners quietly moved to safety, he knew that some principles were worth the risk. The thought of countless lives spared, even by mere hours, fortified him against the fear gnawing at his resolve. That night, as Lucas returned to his quarters, he reflected on the paradox of serving the army while secretly defying it. The uniforms, the salutes, the rigid discipline, all were masks. Beneath them lay choices, small rebellions, and the quiet courage of those who refused to surrender their humanity. And in the shadows, Vogel's message echoed in his mind. In the heart of the Wehrmacht, the resistance survives, not with guns but with conscience. Never forget that. The days following the convoy operation passed with an uneasy tension. Lucas Reinhardt remained in Le Havre, pretending to inspect supplies and maintain order, all the while observing the chaos he had sown. The Gestapo had not yet discovered the subtle sabotage, but he knew it was only a matter of time before suspicion fell somewhere, and someone within the ranks. Every day was a delicate dance. every word and gesture calculated to avoid detection. Lucas spent his mornings walking among the soldiers, exchanging brief nods, inspecting cargo, recording inventories. He kept his mind sharp, memorizing guard rotations, noting conversations between officers, and quietly assessing who could be trusted. In the evenings, he would slip away to meet with Eric and other members of the network, sharing intelligence, coordinating delays, and planning their next steps. The resistance thrived on secrecy, patience, and courage, qualities that were hard to sustain under constant scrutiny. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the harbor, Lucas met Vogel in a narrow alley behind the docks. Vogel's face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes burned with determination. "We have a new mission," Vogel said, his voice low and urgent. "A high-ranking Wehrmacht officer has been appointed to oversee the western supply routes. He is ruthless and loyal to Hitler. If he discovers any irregularities, our network could be destroyed. We need to act before he consolidates power." Lucas listened carefully, weighing the risk. Vogel continued, "We have identified a way to prevent him from interfering, but it will require precision, timing, and absolute discretion. One mistake, and not only our lives but the lives of countless prisoners will be in jeopardy." Over the following days, Lucas worked tirelessly to gather information. He infiltrated officers' meetings, memorized schedules, and subtly altered reports to create confusion without drawing attention. Every action was a careful thread in a web of deception. At night, he would visit the cells where prisoners were held, passing small notes of hope, providing food, and silently assuring them that someone somewhere was working to keep them alive. These small acts gave him purpose, but they also carried tremendous risk. One particularly tense evening, Lucas discovered that Kraus, the Gestapo officer who had arrived during the convoy chaos, had begun to suspect irregularities. Kraus had a reputation for noticing the smallest deviations and linking them to larger plots. Lucas felt a familiar chill as he watched Kraus interrogate soldiers, demanding explanations for delayed shipments and missing crates. The officer's presence was oppressive, a shadow that could crush them all if he connected the dots. Lucas knew he had to act quickly. He devised a plan to mislead Kraus by planting false evidence, implicating a group of officers who were unaware of the resistance. The deception had to be flawless, or the Gestapo's scrutiny would fall upon him. He worked through the night, falsifying logs, altering manifests, and carefully leaving traces for Kraus to follow. When the officer arrived the next day, Lucas watched from a distance as Kraus became ensnared in the web of misinformation. The officer's frustration was evident, and Lucas allowed himself a brief, quiet sense of satisfaction. Amid the tension, Lucas found moments to reflect on the broader stakes of their struggle. The war was relentless, and the Wehrmacht's machinery of oppression seemed unstoppable. Yet, within that machine, small acts of resistance could ripple outward, saving lives, delaying destruction, and preserving humanity. Lucas thought of the prisoners whose fates had been spared, the civilians hidden from forced labor, and the soldiers like Eric who risked everything to do the right thing. These were the victories that mattered, even if they would never be recorded in official histories. As the weeks passed, Lucas and the network received word of a major German offensive planned on the Eastern Front. Supplies, weapons, and reinforcements would be sent through the western ports, including Le Havre. If these shipments proceeded unchecked, thousands of soldiers would be deployed, prolonging the war and increasing the suffering of countless civilians. The resistance had to act again, but the stakes were higher than ever. Kraus's suspicion lingered, and any misstep could be catastrophic. Lucas coordinated with Vogel and the local French resistance to sabotage the shipments. They planned to destroy key vehicles, delay loading schedules, and misdirect guards. The operation required precision and courage, and Lucas felt the familiar weight of responsibility pressing on him. Every crate touched, every order altered, and every guard deceived carried the risk of exposure and death. On the night of the operation, Lucas moved through the docks with Eric, their movements silent and deliberate. They had prepared false manifests, hidden explosives, and carefully timed diversions. Lucas's heart pounded as they worked, aware that discovery would mean immediate execution. The air was thick with the scent of salt, oil, and the faint metallic tang of fear. As they executed their plan, Kraus appeared unexpectedly, moving with the calculated steps of a predator. Lucas froze, barely breathing, and watched as the officer's gaze swept the docks. The tension was unbearable. For a moment, it seemed that Kraus might discover their deception, but at the critical moment, the French operatives set off a controlled explosion, drawing the officers' attention away. Guards scrambled, shouting orders, and chaos erupted. Lucas seized the opportunity to finish altering the manifests, misdirecting shipments, and ensuring the prisoners were hidden from harm. The operation succeeded, but not without cost. Several guards had been injured, and the docks were in disarray. Lucas and Eric retreated to a hidden cellar to regroup, their hands shaking from adrenaline. Vogel arrived shortly after, his expression grave but approving. "We've delayed them again," he said. "But Kraus will not forget this. We must be ready for his retaliation." The following days were filled with tension and cautious planning. Lucas continued his work in the warehouses, pretending to manage shipments while secretly coordinating with the resistance. He had become adept at balancing appearances with subversion, but the constant strain was wearing on him. Sleep was rare, and every conversation carried the risk of betrayal. Trust was precious and scarce, and Lucas relied on instinct and careful observation to identify allies and threats. One evening, Lucas received an urgent message from Vogel. A member of the network had been captured, and Kraus was conducting interrogations. Information about their operations was at risk of exposure. Lucas knew that immediate action was required to protect the remaining members and prisoners. He devised a daring plan to create confusion within the Gestapo, allowing their captured comrade to escape while minimizing risk to the broader network. Under cover of darkness, Lucas and a small team infiltrated the area where the prisoner was held. They created a diversion, using smoke and fire to draw attention away from the holding cells. Guards scrambled, alarms blared, and in the chaos, the captured members slipped free. Lucas guided them through hidden passages and alleyways, moving silently and avoiding patrols. Every step was perilous, but the plan succeeded. The network was safe, and their captured comrade returned to them, shaken but unharmed. Despite the victories, Lucas felt the constant weight of responsibility. Each act of resistance carried consequences, and the risk of exposure was ever present. He often thought of the men and women who had been captured, tortured, or killed for defying the regime. Their courage was a reminder of the stakes and the moral imperative driving their actions. He also thought of Eric, whose youthful bravery and unwavering commitment inspired him to continue despite the danger. As winter approached, Lucas and the network faced new challenges. Supplies for the Wehrmacht were increasing, and Kraus intensified his scrutiny. The pressure was unrelenting, and the resistance had to adapt constantly to avoid detection. Lucas spent long hours planning, coordinating, and executing acts of sabotage and deception, all while maintaining the facade of loyalty. The network relied on subtlety, precision, and trust, and Lucas had become a master of these skills. One night, Lucas reflected on the paradox of his existence. He wore the uniform of an oppressor while secretly defying it, risking his life to save others. The war continued its relentless march, and yet within the machinery of violence, small acts of humanity persisted. He realized that their resistance, though invisible to the world, was a beacon of conscience and courage. Each life saved, each shipment delayed, and each act of defiance mattered, even if history would never acknowledge it. In the final days before another major convoy departure, Lucas prepared for what could be their most dangerous mission yet. Kraus was more vigilant than ever, and the stakes had never been higher. The network's plans were meticulous, relying on every ounce of skill, courage, and intelligence they possessed. Lucas knew that failure could mean the end, not only for themselves, but for countless innocents whose lives depended on their success. The night of the operation arrived. Lucas moved through the docks with practiced precision, his heart pounding but his mind focused. Every step, every gesture, and every decision was critical. The French operatives were in position, the diversions carefully timed, and the false manifests in place. As the operation unfolded, Lucas guided the prisoners to safety, sabotaged vehicles, and misdirected guards with calm efficiency. Chaos erupted at the docks once again, and for a fleeting moment, Lucas allowed himself to feel the exhilaration of success. As dawn approached, the convoy lay delayed, the prisoners hidden, and Kraus left frustrated and confused. Lucas and his comrades retreated to a safe location, exhausted but victorious. They had achieved what seemed impossible, saving lives, delaying destruction, and demonstrating that courage and conscience could persist even in the darkest of times. Lucas knew that the war would continue, that more convoys would come, and that Kraus and the Gestapo would never relent. Yet, he also knew that the hidden resistance within the Wehrmacht endured. In a world defined by obedience, fear, and violence, their quiet rebellion had become a testament to humanity, courage, and the power of conscience. And Lucas, the weary and haunted, remained determined to fight, silently, strategically, and unflinchingly, for what was right.